Premier, can you tell us, when you recall the legislature earlier this fall, can you tell us if you're planning on passing the pronoun policy legislation this fall and how that process is going to work?
Yes, we do. That's why we recalled the legislature early, is to focus on one bill that will be introduced, ultimately not withstood, to not only introduce but to pass legislation. And listen, this is what we have been consistent with over the course of the last number of weeks, is with respect to the policy around parental inclusion that we have been discussing, is that should that policy not be in effect, that we would use the tools that are available to the government to ensure that it is in effect moving forward. And so this really lines up with what we've been saying for a number of weeks now.
Why are you doing it so quickly as opposed to waiting until springtime?
Because the policy is paused here today, what we feel is of paramount importance is to provide clarity to parents, to families, and ultimately to school divisions and educators that are in our classrooms across the province. This will provide that clarity. We've said for a number of weeks now that there are tools available to the government to ensure that this policy is in place moving forward through the next number of months and years, and that is going to be the case. And so it's, recalling the legislature, passing this piece of legislation as quickly as possible is really, it lines up with what we have been stating for a number of weeks, is we're intent on providing that clarity to families, to teachers, and ultimately to everyone in the province.
Is something that you've done this quickly in the past, your government or previous governments?
I don't know if it's in any way this quickly. The notwithstanding clause is not utilized often in this province, utilized much more often in a province like Quebec. And listen, maybe just a comment with respect to the notwithstanding clause. It was part of those very charter discussions advocated on by the premiers at the time of Saskatchewan and Alberta, because there was, as those rights that were included under the charter were being discussed, there was other rights that were identified as well that were not included under the charter. And it was also identified that at some point in the future there could be the collision of these charter protected rights and other rights that are important to Saskatchewan residents and to Canadian residents as well. And when those rights collide, the notwithstanding clause was provided to ensure that the elected government of the day would be able to make the decision on as to which of those rights would be in effect for the people that they ultimately represent. And in this case, that's the rights of a parent to ensure they're involved in their children's decision, bring our parents closer to our children's classrooms, schools, and ultimately make for a more reactionary and more responsive education system in the province.
Premier Moe, a number of law professors are saying that by not waiting until the hearing occurs, invoking notwithstanding clause, this is an admission by your government that you have put in place legislation that's unconstitutional. What do you have to say?
No, this is providing clarity for Saskatchewan residents by, saying that we are going to go in at the earliest opportunity, which is in about a week. We're going to introduce and ultimately pass the legislation. We're going to notwithstand that legislation because of these collision of charter and non-charter rights, to provide clarity for teachers in our classrooms, to provide clarity for the implementation plans that our school divisions are working on, but most importantly, I think, to provide clarity for families, children and parents across the province.
In yesterday's ruling, the judge said that there's no indication in the government's case, no evidence that there was substantial conversation with students, teachers, parents, the interested parties. No evidence experts on child impact were considered, and no evidence that legal experts were considered on the legislation. What do you have to say?
Well, again, as you mentioned, the case hasn't been heard yet, and so that evidence would ultimately be forthcoming. I would presume, I'm not a lawyer, that'll be representing in this case. At that time, it was an injunction hearing. As it turns out, the decision that the government has made to, first of all, enact this policy is on multiple conversations that various MLAs, government MLAs have had with parents, with educators, with many, myself included as an MLA, and have moved forward on the policy. We've been very steadfast in indicating that should that policy not be in effect, as it was determined to be yesterday, that we'd use the tools available to the government to ensure that it is in effect at the earliest opportunity moving forward. And so, all that's happened in the last day has been consistent with the statements that I have made, our Minister of Education has made, and I believe anyone else in the government in the lead up to where we are today.
Sure. Finally, why didn't your government present that to the judge? He says there's no evidence you had any of these conversations.
with
parents, teachers, students?
As I said, I don't know the period of time that the legal counsels had to introduce evidence in what was an injunction hearing, not the main court case that is there. So that I'll leave what happens in the courtroom to the lawyers ultimately that are involved. The decision that the elected government of this province has made is to enact a policy that we strongly feel that parents have advised us to move forward on. And again, I would say that this is a policy that is fully intended to include parents in their children's education as closely as possible. And we encourage parents to reach out to the teacher principal, to reach out to their board directly, their board representative that they have elected, and to become take an even more active role in their school community council. Our school community councils were put in place to bring parents closer to their child's school and education, and ultimately this policy is viewed as being an inclusive policy in doing just that.
Will this legislation include any of the recommendations from the Children's Advocate?
I can't speak to what might or might not be in the legislation specifically. That would happen when it's introduced on the floor of the Assembly. But I would say that as a government, we most certainly need to pay attention to all of the voices that are participating in this discussion, whether it be publicly, whether it be with various MLAs, whether it be with various ministries directly, or whether it be coming from some of our independent officers as well. And I would just say, as inclusive as this policy is viewed, I think there is an opportunity for and a period of time here, a short period of time, for the government to look at, what supports do we have in place for students that may be find themselves in a challenging situation, whether that be with their family dynamics or community dynamics, whatever that might be. We heard Councillor Davies talk about some of the mental health challenges that we're seeing, not just in adults but in children today, and so that is an even broader approach than just in our schools, but on a community-wide approach. And so, we're looking at some of the rapid access counseling services that we have expanded. I think we have them available to adults in 30 communities, now expanding 13 of those communities to youth. Is there a possibility for us to expand some of those services? A year or two ago, we had made a commitment to work with school divisions to ensure that at least one individual in each school has some mental health training to identify some of the challenges that our children might be facing. And so I think this is a very good time for the next few weeks for the government to be looking at, what services do we have in place to support children, to support our students, in addition to supporting the inclusiveness of our families in our education system, to ensure that that those supports are available, whether it be with respect to this policy or anything else that may be happening in our community or in our child's life at school or outside.
And what's your recommendation to school divisions? Should they halt the policy until this is seen through the courts?
This is an the school divisions up until yesterday have informed us that they've been working on their implementation plans of this policy. As of yesterday, the policy would be paused. Many of the school divisions, what pausing the policy means is for a period of time it would not be mandatory to include the parents in some of these discussions. Many of the school divisions already had a similar policy in place where they would look to the parents first for that inclusive discussion to happen. But what I would say to the school divisions is the government is very committed to implementing this policy. We'll be introducing and passing the legislation notwithstanding it. And so those implementation plans will be in effect sooner rather than later to ensure that we are including our parents in our child's life, our child's education across the province. And most certainly, I think that's the clarity that we're trying to provide to everyone involved, including our school divisions, but most importantly, families across the province.
Regarding the injunction on pronoun policy, what are you telling schools to do actually? Should they follow the injunction or keep respecting the policy until the withstanding?
As I mentioned, many school divisions already had a similar policy in place of including the parents in any of the, these sensitive discussions that may occur around a number of different topics. And so, as of yesterday, the policy is on pause for it to be mandatory to include parents in that discussion should a student want to, change their identifications. what we're doing with the announcement yesterday of recalling the legislature, introducing this piece of legislation, and ultimately notwithstanding this piece of legislation, is providing clarity to those school divisions and to all parents as to what the policy is going to be moving forward. And so we're going to ensure that that piece of legislation is passed at the earliest opportunity that we can, and that's going to provide all Saskatchewan residents the clarity that I think, in fairness, everyone is looking for as we look forward to the next number of years.